Hi, seventh graders. We are gonna go over this lesson, organizing plots and projects, to make it a little bit clearer, and then I'm gonna go over the essay with you at the end to help you with that a little bit. So it's up to you to read your objectives and activities. So we're gonna start with vocabulary. And this is all related to the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. So the vocabulary starts with an inciting incident. An inciting incident is some choice, event, or action at the end of the exposition that sets the main plot in motion. Okay, some thing that happens and it sets off everything that's going to happen in the story. Okay, to scrutinize means to examine something closely, and a torrent is a violent outpouring. Like sometimes you'll hear people say there's a torrent of rain. That would mean that it's raining very heavily. All right, so task, purpose, and audience. Before beginning any project, it is important to understand your task, purpose, and audience. Different tasks, purposes, and audience suggest different types of organizational and rhetorical strategies. Tasks refer to the requirements of your assignment. Are you writing a literary analysis essay? Are you giving a speech? Are you assembling a multimedia project? Purpose refers to the intention of the project. For example, are you writing to inform or teach someone about something? Are you writing to entertain people or to persuade or convince an audience of something? The purpose of your project can influence any number of things, including what kind of language you use and the medium you choose. And the medium is like an essay, speech, or PowerPoint, things like that. So in the little gray box, the note says most projects completed in a classroom setting will have specific instructions that define the assigned task. So in other words, since you are not in a typical classroom setting for the teacher to tell you exactly what to do, you have to be sure to read the instructions carefully to make sure you fully understand what is required of you. And then you can always ask me to clarify if you don't know. Either send me a message, email, give me a call, whatever. So here are some good questions to ask yourself about your project's purpose when you go to do any project that you have. What are you trying to accomplish in this project? What do you want your audience to do, to think, or feel? Do you need to show that you understand certain concepts or have mastered certain skills? So in a lot of your essay questions and projects, yes, that is what you're going to have to do. So you should keep in mind the lesson or assignments that have come before that, and not just rely on what you already know. Keep in mind the assignments and lessons that you've just done in order to complete a project or essay. Do you have an assignment that specifies a particular strategy or argument? For example, are you supposed to compare two things or to argue a position? If you have a choice of mediums, which medium will best help you achieve your purpose? Like if you have a choice of things in your project, if you have a choice of doing an essay, PowerPoint, video, whatever, you have to think which will help you the best. And what kind of reaction do you want to achieve? So we will go on. Audience refers to the intended readers or viewers of a particular project or piece of writing. Knowing your audience is important because how you address an audience of experts as opposed to an audience of friends is different. For instance, one audience might need sophisticated concepts defined, while others might not. Most often in school, your audience is going to be your teacher. So keep that in mind. Sometimes in projects, it'll specify that your audience is supposed to be somebody different. Like it might say in a project, write as if you are talking to a friend, or write a letter to your town council. In that case, that's your pretend audience anyway. let's see. Think about how you speak to your parents and then how do you speak to your friends. Big difference usually, right? Especially if you compare how you might talk to your teacher. Yeah, then there's a really big difference. So, a note, in a classroom setting, the imagined reader or audience is typically assumed to be someone like you, someone who's familiar with a topic but not necessarily an expert. Here are some questions to ask when considering your audience. Who will be reading or viewing your project? Most likely your teacher. What does your audience already know or believe about your topic? What is your audience's educational, social, and or political background? Those are things to keep in mind. Does your audience have any special physical or intellectual needs or requirements? What is your relationship with your audience and how might that affect your language and tone? What does your audience need and or expect from you? What kind of response do you want from your audience? In the case of submitting a project, you probably want a good grade as a response. And how can you best appeal to your audience? So you need to think about those things, and we'll go on to plot development in chapter 17. The first line of the prologue tells us that Charlotte will be accused of murder, brought to trial, and found guilty. By chapter 17, these events have begun to transpire. When we speak of events, we are talking about plot. Understanding plot structure is important as it gives us a way to analyze what happens to the characters both physically and emotionally. Novelist and playwright Gustav Freytag suggested that all good plots move in a relatively predictable pattern. This pattern is known as Freytag's pyramid. It looks like this. It's a modernized Freytag's pyramid. So according to Freytag, plots typically move in this order. There's an exposition or setup where we get the who, the what, the where, and the when. Kind of the setting there in the exposition. It's kind of a flat line that goes along to tell you about everything that happens. Then there's suddenly an inciting incident. Something that happens to set off the plot. So then you have the rising action, which is a series of escalating conflicts. So it might go up and then down a tiny bit, and up, down a tiny bit, up. This is all the rising action. And do you see the peaks of these? The lines that are going up are all complications, things that are happening in the plot. And the rising action, it finally comes to a peak, which is called the climax, which often involves some major revelation and or final confrontation. And then we've got the falling action, or denouement, in which the results of the climax are dealt with. Okay, so things are kind of going down, settling down, and things are being dealt with. Then there's the resolution, in which loose ends are tied up, and it's usually implied. They usually don't say, well, and this was resolved by doing this, and this was fixed by doing this. It's usually interaction of characters and dialogue that's happening, and you know that something is concluded. So in most stories, the exposition section in the beginning presents some sort of unstable situation. This section typically ends with something called the inciting incident, in which some choice event or action sets the main plot in motion, like we talked about. So think about which moment represents the inciting incident in the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. Just think back for a minute to the beginning of the story. Okay? What sets that in motion? How about the moment Charlotte is forced to board the Seahawk and travel alone? Think about how far Charlotte has come since that moment and how our impressions of her and Captain Jaggery have changed. Okay, so there was all the setup, and then Charlotte is forced to board the Seahawk, and then she's traveling alone. So that was the inciting incident. And then everything that's happening since are the complications and the rising action. Okay? So here's a plot worksheet to help you organize the events of the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. This is for your own use so that you know what's going on. And if you fill this out or copy it on a sheet of paper and fill it out, it'll help you with all of your essay questions that you're going to need to do, and it will help you answer your multiple choice questions too. So it starts out at the beginning with who, what, where, and when, the exposition. Then your unexpected event, your inciting incident. Then you have your rising action, major events, action, and reaction. So it keeps going one event into another, into another, into another, into another, and it keeps going as the action is rising. Then you hit your climax, your final confrontation, or your final incident. And then your resolution starts. Your resolution doesn't usually happen suddenly. Usually kind of has the falling action, like on the Freytag's pyramid, falling action, then it ends with the end of the story with your resolution. So over the last several chapters, the conflict between Charlotte Doyle and Captain Jaggery has taken center stage. Captain Jaggery, once a symbol of order and virtue, is now a symbol of dishonesty and cunning. With Charlotte accused of murder and Captain Jaggery ready to convict her, the stakes have never been higher. Their final confrontation is starting to feel inevitable, and it should, because the story's climax is right around the corner. Okay, I'm going to leave it to you to read Let's Review, and we're going to skip these multiple choice questions for now and go to the essay at the end, and I'm going to read it and explain to you what you need to do. Collecting and presenting textual evidence in support of an argument is an important skill. Pretend you are going to write a literary analysis essay on the external and internal conflict works in the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. So I know that's a mouthful, but what you need to do here, where it says pretend you're going to write a literary analysis essay, you just have to pretend you are collecting evidence of internal and external conflict. You're not going to write a whole literary analysis essay right here. They want you to collect some textual evidence of internal and external conflict. Remember, internal conflict is within a character. It happens within their own mind and within their own feelings. External conflict is something that happens between that character and someone else, between that character and force of nature, or external conflict could be between two other characters or other forces of nature. So what you're going to do here is collect and give at least 3 specific examples from the text and explain why each is related to either external or internal conflict. So you are going to find some scenes or quotes or some things that happened in the story, and you're going to write that out, something from the story. And then you will say, this is an example of external conflict because it shows blah, blah, blah. Okay? And then you're going to find another example from the story, another quote or another action scene or whatever, and you're going to write out what happens. Then you're going to say, this is shows internal conflict because blah, blah, blah. Okay? So you're going to do 3 of those. Okay? Not 3 for each internal and external. You have to have a mixture, either 2 external and 1 internal, or 2 internal and 1 external. Okay, just 3 examples altogether, but it has to show a little bit of variety there. Okay, if you still need help with that question, let me know, and I'll be happy to help you. But otherwise, you can go ahead and read the Let's Review and finish this assignment. So good luck. Bye.